A new year brings new trends. It seems to be inevitable. If anything, the pace of change, of what's in and what's out, seems only to accelerate. Social media is constantly extolling and ridiculing new directions in everything from fabrics and wallpapers to kitchen design and color palettes. It is becoming harder than ever to keep up and to distinguish what's ephemeral from what is of lasting appeal and value. How do you keep things fresh and innovative without becoming a slave to fashion? How do you respond to your clients' desire for what's new without subverting your own aesthetic? I have with me today 3 designers who not only understand trends, they've helped to set trends. And they are here with us to share what they're looking at, what they despise, and what they hope to see ahead in 2023. First up is Shannon Wollack and Brittany Zwickl of LA-based Studio Lifestyle. The duo creates private homes and mountain retreats that incorporate natural materials, rich woods, dramatic stone, and serene palettes. The results are sleek yet sumptuous, clean-lined, yet always luxe and comforting. Welcome, Shannon.
Hello, Michael. We're thrilled to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. And hello, Brittany.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for having us.
We're so pleased that you're here. Jonathan Rachman is a designer who, by definition, brings an international approach to his work. He was born in Sumatra, Indonesia, trained in Switzerland, and is now based in San Francisco, and he continues to travel the world. His rooms are exuberant, colorful, and richly layered, imbued with his love of antiques and vintage pieces, which he boldly mixes with contemporary furnishings. His new book, currently classic, was recently published by Flammarion. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me.
I'm also pleased to have with us Noel Fadden, Vice President of Merchandising at Chairish, who brings real data to this tricky subject. Noel knows what sold on Chairish last year and what didn't, and she has real insight into what designers are looking for in 2023 and how that will shape interior design in the year ahead. Hello, Noel.
Hi, Michael. This is my favorite thing to talk about, so I'm so happy to be here.
Good. So I want to start, why don't we start with you, Shannon? What is a trend that you saw last year, or maybe started the year before? Because trends are fast, but they do take a little while to get going.
Of course.
What is something that you saw and you liked and took interest in, and what's something that you just didn't like at all?
I think everyone's going to agree, but the natural one that, I think any designer can go to right now is the boucle and kind of the curved sofa. And now that CB2 is doing the whole collection and everyone else, it's kind of, I'd say timeless is like the wrong word to describe it. So as sad as it is.
So that's something you've seen enough.
Absolutely. And, it's still, you can still use a touch of boucle, but I'm saying those all white rooms are kind of the all clean. And we're in California, so there's definitely still, wanting to keep things light and bright, but it just that kind of completely muted color palette and all the overly boucle and just kind of walking in, every house has it, whether it's the curved sofa or the chair or whatnot. It's a little...
All those nubby fabrics.
Exactly. So I'd say that's the easiest one,
And what about you, Brittany? Because your work, the work that you do with Shannon, does have pale colors and all of that. So how do you feel about what Shannon said?
I was going to just touch on for something that I really love right now is, all the plaster walls. Everybody's kind of sick and tired of just paint, and there's just kind of like the flatness of paint, and moving into the plaster that just gives you a lot more depth and texture in any space. It just kind of plays with the light a lot more. So I'm loving that and continue to love it.
So you're talking about hand-finished plaster, Venetian plaster, that kind of artisanal thing?
Yeah, not necessarily like Venetian, not necessarily like shiny, but just hand-applied plaster that's got a little bit more depth to its look than just a plain painted drywall. So I think that brings a lot to spaces. And like Shannon was saying, not wanting to move away from just kind of clean, white, boring, rooms, but maybe you still need a little bit of a lighter color palette for whatever reason. It can still add a lot more depth, and it's not just kind of so flat. So I definitely think that that's something that's become more and more popular and will continue through this next year. And as far as trends that I'm over, I'm so sick of modern farmhouse. I think that, especially in Los Angeles, it's like every house down the street, they're just throwing up board and batten. And it's just like, Okay, come on. Let's get a little more creative here.
Okay, great. Now, Jonathan, what about you?
So to start with, I don't follow trend. I don't know what the trends are.
Every designer says that, Jonathan.
I'm the most unhip designer, the untrendy. So I do agree that's part of the problem with trend.
Right.
I want to pick up on what Shannon said, but expand a little bit. That boucle sofa, but also there are three things for me. One, just stop making your house or your hotel looks like a furniture showroom. Just everything from the same showroom. I want that. I'm not going to name any brand, but we all know who we're talking about or what we're talking about. I can't stand it. Number two, this open plan, open shelving kitchen. Yes, it looks pretty for you, for the photo shoot or whatever it is, but how practical is that? Truly, really is. Lastly, lighting. That's faux or fake, mid-century, or this. I'm sorry, am I allowed to say boobs in this show? If not, edit it out.
You are.
We say a lot worse.
I don't want to see boobs.
Agreed.
I don't want to see men boobs. I don't want to see booby-looking light
hanging over the dining table, right?
Everywhere, just everywhere. Or the same token about phallic. Just forget about the phallic factor, but just it's basically piping. You put light bulbs at the end. I mean, what is that? Can we just stop that? I mean, it's boring. It's annoying. It's everywhere. It's that's just the problem with trend.
Okay, we got it.
Oh, no, I was saying some things that Jonathan was saying, which I see happening is with the kitchen. Like we're seeing a lot of, especially when designing houses and some of the architectural details is the kitchen, like kind of like a galley kitchen going behind the main kitchen, where whether even if it's kind of has a divider, something you can see through, or it's just a total separate kitchen. So, because the heartbeat of the home is the kitchen. So people are hanging out, but you don't want to mess all the time. So there's kind of these two separate kitchen stories going on. And then also with the lighting, there was a moment where it's like everything was so big and so decorative in kind of a pendant or chandelier way. And I'm kind of seeing that it's like a lot more lamps and floor lamps are really making a huge comeback inside, a lot more like romantic decorative lighting as opposed to such heavy applied, installed lighting on the ceiling or stuff like that. So I'm really definitely seeing this like throwback to these kind of like romantic little, lamps in shelving units and in kitchen counters and all this stuff to just kind of give like a little bit of romanticism as opposed to this overly kind of overt statement.
Right. No, well, I'm sure that Chairish has sold a fair number of boucle fabrics and curved sofas. I mean, the curved sofa came out of a revival of Vladimir Kagan, which started, I think, a good 10 years ago. And now it's like you were saying, Shannon, now you can get it at CB2, which is sort of the nature of trends. So what would you respond to? What's been selling on Chairish that either echoes what they're saying, our team of experts here is saying, or goes contrary to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so interesting. Our vantage point is we're getting inventory from all over the country and then also so much from Europe, right? And the things we're getting from Europe are really different than what we see in the US market typically.
Oh, interesting.
And then every day, I mean, this is our sport. We get to watch what shoppers are buying in real time and we get to see where they're located and what they're buying. And so we have this vantage point of seeing, these trends all over the country. And so obviously, I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area, but what I'm seeing selling, in the Northeast or in Texas or in Florida, it's so different. So it's really fun and it's really interesting. I think one of the biggest trends that we observed this past year that we were really surprised by was such a return to traditional. So even just traditional American colonial revival, Federal pieces, Sheraton pieces, Chippendale, Chinese Chippendale, and then just a lot of ornamentation and florals and chintz. And so, Brittany, to your point about people wanting to get away from just plain drywalled walls, this was our standout year for wallpaper. We saw so much interest in wallpaper on a year-over-year basis. We sold so much more. We also sold tons of wallpaper samples. We saw shoppers just fill their cart with like 30 or 40 different samples. And you could see that they were kind of thinking about the whole house, and they were doing all the blues and all the greens. So that was really interesting to see. And then we've also seen a big resurgence in antique French and Flemish tapestries.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, that's something I would not have predicted. I mean, the return of antiques and really older pieces, I'm all in favor of. I think that's exciting. And I personally love a tapestry, but I would not have thought that was trendy. So that's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah. It is. And people are doing the painted wall murals and everything. I think that kind of leads into all the tapestries and kind of giving it less of a, more like you were saying, a European or romantic look versus like the boho kind of super casual. There's this touch of formality, of some of these beautiful pieces. Yes.
I also think less open floor plans. A lot more people are starting to kind of enclose dining spaces and things like that. And again, I don't know if it's just like a touch bringing back traditional elements or bringing back a little bit more of formality. Maybe it gives a little bit of flexibility to spaces more so if it's not so open, as we've all kind of continued to work from home periodically.
I was going to say, I think the pandemic had a big part to do with that, working from home. You need to be able to shut a door.
Exactly. You need flexibility.
I think also the pandemic, of course. But I think because of how we're separated for so many years, and if I don't follow trend, but if I have to predict,
Set the trend. You're setting the trend, Jonathan.
I believe, so I'm all about more is more is never enough, or know when more is less, all that good jazz. But I think because of the pandemic and our need to be reunited, to reconnect with our family, I personally, for once, I'm very sentimental, and I think because of all that, I think the traditional and the romance and the sentimental factor of design, of interior design of your home, because of our emotions during the pandemic. I think going back to the traditional, the maximalism, the wallpaper, the tapestry, and that combined with the return or the big news, be it the good, the bad, and the sad, of the royal family. And I have to bring it up because I always give credit where credit's due. But I think if I have to single one wallpaper company out, and I'm partial, obviously, de Gournay has made the wallpaper world has taken the wallpaper world into a different level. Sorry, I just have to do this because they did my cover, and they are sort of like my English hoarded family. I hoard all kinds of items in conjunction with the royal the family events this last few years, as well as the pandemic has brought us all into this point. And I'm so happy versus what we've been trying to get away from, like what Shannon and Brittany were saying, and I support that.
I think it's interesting that in terms of wallpaper, I think we're also starting to see a little bit of a shift in terms of that, because I totally agree with you, Jonathan. De Gournay, everybody woke up everybody to the potential of wallpaper, and their wallpapers are so gorgeous. But I've been seeing more abstract and large scale, not just scenic, but really abstract, large scale abstracts, which like Fromental does it, Philip Jeffries is doing it.
Absolutely.
And do you think that's something that's going to continue?
Well, that's just the beauty of wallpaper. Wallpaper is one of the venues, one of the doors into your fantasy. Wallpaper could be anything. Will it continue? That's a one thing about trend that sickens my design senses. Once somebody starts, the big ladies, the big guys, the designer world or the royal family starts, everybody's doing it. This big pattern of abstract, I know what you're talking about. Have I used it? I don't think I have so far, but I just don't want to see one thing unless it truly is a classic. There's a big difference about classic and trendy, right? But once you make it into a trend, it has an expiration date. I don't think it will continue. I think it's a trend and it will stop. What will continue to continue is the classic, the chinoiserie, the scenery, the old world senses, but mixed and juxtaposed with interesting stuff. So it's nobody wants to live in a museum, nobody wants to live in a period house, and that's where Chairish comes from for me. How amazing it is to I don't know how many houses during the pandemic we literally design, furnish simply from Chairish, period.
Right.
So,
Brittany, what do you think about the other kind of wallpapers? I mean, listen, we started with grass cloth, then people discovered de Gournay. Now it's like I see more and more. Do you think that's something you guys would ever use in your work, Shannon? Would you ever do like an ad?
I think what I was saying is like what Jonathan was saying is like some of the classics. What our goal is like to take a classic but kind of have a juxtaposition with whatever the client wants or the architecture of the house. Or, people do come to us for a little bit of freshness and something that's unique and wanting to be kind of a little bit, I don't ever like to say trendy, but like definitely on the forefronts when you walk in, it's like feeling just new. And we kind of tend to usually have a younger clientele. So I think we would take one of those wallpapers. For us, it's not about doing the whole house. It's doing about really special places. So it's a little bit of a surprise, whether it's an office, a media room, a powder room, a lounge, or whatever it is, and kind of using it, but always in a twisted way, a little bit, maybe, offsetting it with some, maybe really interesting stone or something like that, or different architect. One of the things we're really leaning into and we've been seeing is the architectural element. So it's like, again, like we're being in LA, there were so many big white houses built, these open floor plans. So we're seeing so much more, tighter spaces, intimate spaces, moldings, detailed trims, and all these beautiful detailed work. I mean, even going to the windows, it's like not just stain, or steel windows anymore. I mean, some of it's going back to, beveled windows and giving it a layered look, but just with the freshness, with some cleaner lines. So it's kind of this really playful juxtaposition where it's not so classic, but it's definitely not so heavy. It's a mix of this kind of timeless, but still fresh and new, but not trendy, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's so interesting. We've been talking about maybe there have been so many open floor plans and open spaces. And one thing we also really noticed this past year was the return of 4-poster beds and canopy beds. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's that sense of kind of, engulfing you. And,
exactly.
Closure,
we
safety.
were so surprised.
I love it.
Yeah.
Or even the bunk beds.
We've
always done a ton of bunk beds, but it used to kind of start for kids, and now we're doing it in multiple second homes, vacation homes, main homes is just even when people have their families in town, as another place for a big family to bunk adults. But we add these kind of curtains and shelter places that make it feel more cocoony. So it's like more like a nook, as opposed to using the word bunk bed. And I do feel like people just everyone wants coziness. No one is looking for anything they don't want. And our clients don't want anything in their house that they have to sit in that's uncomfortable. So that's a huge thing we get,
Can I also say one word? Tented room. Can we bring that?
Mm-hmm. I do love a tented room.
I don't want to say that that's trendy, but I have been seeing that a lot more.
It's not trendy. I think it's just, to me, it's like when people ask me, what do you think about wallpaper? And it's wallpaper coming back. Number one, let me correct you. Wallpaper never left.
Right.
No.
Brass never left. And the same with tented room. Tented room never left. I'm counting on you two, Brittany and Shannon. I'm a hoarder, especially in antiques and vintage. I think people know that. I am counting on you, the younger generations, to be the guardian to continue to educate and to spread the love of antiques. When I read this last few years that the younger or the kids or whatever generation, whatever the labels are, they don't want their grandma or their or their parents' antique. Oh, that breaks my heart. I love using antiques in a modern setting, in a clean setting. I think it adds a lot of gorgeousness.
I agree. It adds a lot more depth to a room. Yes, a soul, some storytelling. Yeah,
and Noelle has Chairish has been selling more antiques, but you mentioned Chinese Chippendale. Are there periods that are more popular? I mean, I still think like Georgian, which I love, is that plain Georgian is probably not as popular as some other more ornate things, but I could be wrong.
You'd be surprised. We saw a lot of Georgian.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Especially in dining tables and sideboards. I mean, we've always sold antiques. We've always sold traditional pieces, but I think this year has really been, it was so pronounced. And also in things, I mentioned the tapestries, but in, big sets of antique plates that are intended to be displayed on the wall.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. And also then, of course, in tabletop, massive sets of porcelain and, amazing over the top, Majolica pieces and terrines, like figural terrines. And, they're collectible items. I mean, they're not inexpensive. They're absolutely heirloom pieces. And it's interesting. It's some of those pieces, not only do they sell, it's how quickly they sell. I mean, some of these they sell within, hours or a day because they're just, really amazing.
And that's so interesting because I swear for a decade you did not see a piece of Majolica or a figural terrine in a Shelter magazine or in any of the entertaining stories that you just didn't see them. And I mean, in the 70s and 80s you saw them, but in the 90s and 2000s you didn't see them.
It's back.
So that's so interesting to me.
I don't think our clients own them. I mean, in all honesty, and now we're starting fresh with clients that had registries 20 years ago and we're displaying this stuff. It's like, the days of Heath ceramics. I'm not saying that, I mean, that's all still timeless, but we're really seeing decorative plates, which is really funny. And like displaying some of those and having them some every day and like really kind of leaning into that kind of boldness or funness or pattern or, it's really fun.
Yeah, right. I think post-pandemic, people want to have a little bit more fun and be a little bit more playful too, after being so serious.
It's interesting. It's, Jonathan, I know this makes you happy, but I've been seeing, like you're saying, bringing character to a space, something that's different. And I've been seeing it even in terms of like window treatments. Now you see draperies, you see pelmets again. I mean, and there was at least 15 years I never saw a pelmet in a room, So I think there is this shift to like, Noel, you were saying cozier, softer spaces. And the other thing that we've been talking about that I've been hearing for a couple of years is going to have a resurgence and it's going to become trendy is, decorative tapes and fringes. And I was interested to see a room like, I don't think you necessarily have to be a traditional designer to start using them.
We've been using like our fringes, our fringe collection has gone I mean, there's a lot of stuff and we usually, kind of go for a little bit of a cleaner, but we definitely are leaning into the piping and the fringes. We just did a, big project with a lot of fringe and it's been really fun leaning into some of the velvets and, we always use mohair and stuff, but some of these kind of heavier, and even just window treatments that aren't just your natural kind of shears and stuff, just definitely heavier detailing on all that. So it's been a lot of, a lot of fun. Vibes. It's really cozier, playful, but still a nod to the past, and just really unique too, because we all know, that's all detailing too. It's hard to, it's part of the artistry work of what we do. It's not like you can just buy that at CB2 naturally, at least not now. We'll give it a year, who knows? But
Right. But because I remember there was a period where everything had nail heads. All the furniture, all the chairs, everything had nail heads. Now it's getting even more elaborate. I mean, I think that people responded to that very well because it was kind of like, gives it another dimension. And now we're getting into the decorative tapes and the fringes and the I don't know. I don't think it's going to be like the crown, Jonathan.
No.
But I do think people want richer things in there.
I'm glad you said the word palmet and lambrequin. So we had a recruit this recently and had a master's degree in interior design. Mind you, I have no degree in interior design. And when we talk about palmet or lambrequin, she had no idea what, and that just broke my heart. I'm like, what has happened here? So I'm always happy to spread the knowledge. I started from, I had no idea about interior design when I started, but everybody has to start somewhere. So I'm glad we're discussing and talking about passementerie, bouillon, and palmets, lambrequins. I could go on and on and on. And
curtain tiebacks.
Exactly.
Oh my God, we have custom houlas. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now one of the things I want to ask you all about is color palettes. Because, it's always, one of my first episodes of the Chairish podcast was about color, and we called it Colors of the Year, because every major paint company or Pantone, they always have a color of the year. And I actually did a little research. This year, Benjamin Moore's color of the year is called Raspberry Blush. The Pantone color is Viva Magenta. And Farrow & Ball has just issued a new color called Flame Red. And now although Sherwin-Williams, their color of the year is called Naval and is a dark blue. So, I agree with you, Jonathan. I like to think I'm above trends too.
I'm not
ahead of the trend.
But
I do know that, like, when I decorated I got a new country house 4 years ago, and half of it is green. My kitchen's green. My dining room is a different shade of green. It's like, I'm above trends, but then green was this huge trend.
Exactly.
So I'm not impervious, okay? So what do you guys think about the colors that are appearing? Is it going to be these warm reds or raspberries? Is it like the major companies? Have you been using those or seeing those? Or do you think, the Sherwin-Williams blue is like a traditional blue that we've been seeing for a while? I mean, what do you see?
We have been leaning into a little bit more of the reds, which is kind of, I would say, unusual for us, but we have a few different rooms and a couple different projects in different parts of California that we are kind of leaning into this more red tone.
But not
it's a little bit more pared down.
Red.
Sorry, what?
It's not like red. It's a specific kind of like
a toned
red
down version.
Right.
But I think, it's
warmer colors.
Yes.
Intense.
Yes, warmer colors and less, again, like we talked about earlier, of this just the very muted palette. Like people are wanting to bring in some richness and some.
Here's what I got to say about colors. I'm a unicorn. I love my rainbow. We know that. But what I love about colors. So as a florist, I used to be a florist. I still design flowers. In the beginning, carnation. Oh, who can stand carnation? But it's not so much about carnation. It's about how you apply, how you use the carnation. And the same thing with colors to me. I barely pay attention to color of the year. I know about it, but do I abide by it or do I follow? Not really. To me, it's just how you use colors and how we all. I love colors, and just there's time and place and space for every color. That's
what's funny, because I was going to say the same thing. So when we were kind of knew we were doing this today, I'm like, I should really look up the Pantone colors. I have no idea what it is for this year, because it's truly a case by case scenario in each home. And the one color I may have been sick of is the primary, blue navy that everyone painted their, island of. And I just can't but other than that, literally we have so many different projects, so many different architectures, so many different personalities that those are colorful enough. And we really try to just make it work for that kind of specific type of project. So the Pantone colors, I don't know. And Brittany, I think you probably agree, kind of mean nothing to us, which is funny because that's just the trend.
And it also the colors and tones of whatever we would use in a project also depends so much on, the location of the project,
the light,
what region,
environment.
The environment, the light, the architecture, and the clients, of course, so again.
And the materials,
Right.
Is there any specific colors that's selling more? Whatever it may be, whatever item.
No, I was going to ask Noelle that. Yes, I'm glad. Because, it's like, we know that this color of the year thing is a marketing thing. It's to create interest, to get people to think about color. I mean, nobody's going to go and paint their whole house red or even any red, but it gets people to think. So, Noelle, what has been selling? Have you noticed any colors that are stronger?
Yeah, absolutely. We sell such a breadth. And, we have this, we have all these internal reporting tools. And so we can see, okay, for our furniture category, our top selling color is actually brown because it's so much traditional brown wood. But then we really see color trends jump out at us in some of our upholstered pieces and in tabletop and in pillows and wall coverings. We're really noticing, I think really more warmth in color. So warm mustards, pinks, but now it's more of like a salmony watermelon. A few years ago, it was, we were selling grape juice because we do have a painted case good program. And, Benjamin Moore's grape juice was this a deep purple, and that sold really well. We also saw huge success with these pink and red table lamps. So like, a red lamp with a pink shade. And now I think things are getting some of the colors are getting a little bit muddier. Which is interesting to see. And if
we're seeing the terracotta,
absolutely,
kind of like the ranges of high to low and the terracotta.
And when we see,
like a
blue
touch of muddiness
remains perennially popular, but now instead of just a more straightforward navy, we see it more as, it's either inkier, or if it's a lighter blue, it's almost like a French blue.
Interesting. And I want to ask each of you, like, we all look to history, except for maybe your staff member, Jonathan, who doesn't know enough history. But we all look to history for inspiration. And, for example, I've been noticing a lot more William Morris, who's actually an artist, a period that I love, that British arts and crafts, William Morris, the wallpapers. I've been noticing that showing up in a lot more interiors. I think the company that owns the rights just hired a designer to recolor them, bring them fresher. So that's interesting. But, and I remember a few years ago, people were talking about Art Nouveau was going to have an influence. I think Art Nouveau maybe is a little too specialized. I haven't seen a lot of Art Nouveau interest, but I do see arts and crafts. Is there periods that you guys are looking to, or that you turn to for inspiration at the moment that maybe is a little unexpected? Mid-century modern, of course, was everywhere, but
Brittany, it's interesting that you brought up William Morris, because I do feel like that I've seen a lot of that lately also. And I think that, and again, just talking about the crown and all of these kind of English anecdotes, is a lot of what we're seeing too is people wanting a little bit more English style kitchens, like the painted cabinetry, but maybe in a more interesting color, than just a plain white or something like that. And just kind of, again, feeling that hominess, that little like bit of comfort that we've all kind of wanted over the last few years, and just a little bit more detail, a little bit more ornate.
Yeah. Like the
touches.
Edge detail, the cabinetry detail, the hardwood detail, all those kind of, the plumbing detail where things just aren't so harsh. There's a little bit softer and a little lived in effect of all that stuff. Versus just these, again, massive kitchens that are super open and just
sleek. And that.
Also, just a lot of the, especially us being in LA, a lot of the white oak, we're seeing it go more to richer tones of woods and stuff, and not just these huge white oak homes and flooring and cabinetry and stuff in a mix of woods to give it more of a soul and a richness.
Right. And Jonathan, is there a period of style that you're looking at?
I look at it more from a point of view of different eras and different area. If you might know Michael, but some of the younger designers or clients might not know who Oliver Mezzl is. So Oliver Mezzl is this amazing, I look up to him. He is a set designer, a fashion designer, an interior designer, theater designer. To me, he is like the epitome of man with many hats, or what do you call that? A Renaissance man. That's why when I design a maximalism room or something, like I said, nobody wants to live in a theater or in a museum. Nobody wants to live in an Art Deco room in 2023, all completely down to the T, correctly done. But to do Art Deco and combine it with Louis XVI or Empire meets Georgian, whatever it might be, to me, that's more interesting. I think it's just, it goes back into how you combine them, how you juxtapose them. It's all in the application.
Right. Well, it's also interesting, again, to get back to the crown. I think that sort of created this interest in like pre and post-war look. Like we're Oliver Mezzl, very theatrical, friend of Cecil Beaton, all of that kind of stuff. That it's like, I think those periods are interesting. And Noel, I'd love to know if you think that the buyers on Chairish, where do they look? What inspires them? What do you think? Where do they look? Obviously, they watch The Crown. Everybody watched The Crown. Let's face it. That show about Catherine the Great, which had some sumptuous, incredible costumes and sets. Do you think that has an impact on what people look
absolutely.
for?
Most recently, there was a clear White Lotus influence. We started selling the Sicilian head vases. Absolutely. And
Oh my
luckily
God.
we have some.
I was actually wondering about
Isn't that crazy?
That is so funny. That's so instant,
It's instant. And so, I mean, it was...
Well, it's like everyone wants to travel there. That's the biggest hotel now. Everyone wants to go there,
And they should. It's fabulous. I was just there. Pre-White Lotus, I'll have to.
I know. That's always good.
Right.
Trendsetter. You're a trendsetter.
Exactly.
No, I was just on the cusp of the trend then. But that's so interesting that it has an instant effect, And I think that's a big change to design because, back 20 years ago, popular culture didn't have that. It had an impact, but it wasn't that immediate. And I think that's so interesting.
That's where we are trying to figure out the best approach with that, because we build homes that could take 4 years to build. Now they're seeing these big trends, say on White Lotus or the Crown or whatnot. Now that's all going to change by the time we actually install furniture 4 years from now. So I think it's trying to, balance that with trying to figure out what's timeless, what's next, what's existing, and just kind of blending all those, and also really educating the client that, okay, we can have some of this, but it needs to withstand the test of time. It's 4 years now. It looks very different. We're going to be living in this home than currently right now, because things are turning so quickly.
Yeah, because that could be season 6 of the White Lotus, and who knows where it's going to be set,
I know. Season 6, we're talking about season 40 at that point.
Okay, here's another trend I want to ask you guys what you think of that I've been noticing. There was this whole revival of interest in brutalism and brutalist architecture of the 70s and stuff. And then, of course, it translated, there's that... Suddenly there was all this popularity of Axel Einar-Horth and his sort of chunky furniture. Pierre Jovanovic, he did those raw wood back sofas. That has had, I've seen that show up a lot. Is that something that you guys, that influence has shown up a lot is what I want to say. Do you think that that's something that's going to continue on, this kind of more, sort of, I guess it's sort of a refined country look or lodge look? Is that something that you think is going to continue?
I'm going to answer that the same way I answer that abstract wallpaper. Mm-hmm. I think there will be a period of that and it will phase away. Or if you're smart enough, you can have that style just enough in a room and not making it. Yeah.
I think everything in moderation. Yeah. Everything in moderation.
That is a look that I think would go with studio lifestyle. I could see you guys adapting that and using some of those pieces beautifully.
Yes, thank you. Well, and we have, and I think that, yes, just a little bit, everything in moderation. And I think that having, a little bit of natural elements and rusticity is kind of nice and kind of can pair well with other vintage pieces and give a space more soul. Like what we were speaking about earlier.
Right. And have your clients ever come to you with like a trend or something that they're seeing and say, I love this, I want that? Is that something that happens to you guys?
Sure. Every day, every hour.
Well, especially with Pinterest and Instagram.
Everything. I mean,
so what are they showing you?
Instagram pics. They're sending it nonstop.
Everything has come to Instagram. But what are they responding to at the moment? Because, listen, we can make fun of trends, and God knows I try to. But, they do create interest and they do create newness. And they, and that's all good for our industry. It's certainly good for Chairish, right, Noelle? I mean, people watch the White Lotus and they want those heads, So it's all, that's good. But Jonathan, you're totally right. Not too much. How do you edit it? So I'm just kind of trying to get a sense of, for the year ahead, what are their clients going to be coming to them with, and what should they be responding affirmatively to, and what should they be holding their nose? What do you think?
Well, actually, recently we've been seeing more and more, kind of on the Instagram or the notes I'll get, actually some more really interesting sculptural and architectural chairs, which I thought was really fun and nice, but also still leaning into some comfort. Definitely art.
The chair, it's sort of a sculpture as opposed to maybe you don't sit on it so much.
Which is kind of nice because it's not just some overall room. One thing we're seeing a lot too is this, going back to the smaller rooms. So people are really liking that, whether it's a media room or, a study, a lot of studies, but also going back to the living room and not such a formal living room, being playful with the space and the seating arrangement. So, a lot of people will send they keep saying, oh, I want the Soho House look, not meaning the look of what the Soho House does, but meaning that kind of conversational seating. So we're seeing a lot of people sending stuff like that, where you can have a living room, but you maybe have, and it's maybe not even a built-in bar, it's a hutch with the bar and conversational seating and then seating over here, and just kind of these different layers in rooms, because, they want to have a living room, but make sure it's used. So I think it's all
not
usable
so formal
spaces.
and
Well,
stiff.
and
Exactly.
also,
So things that look
oftentimes
fine but are useful.
these rooms are so big, so I think it's helpful to kind of pair off these smaller spaces.
Break it into areas.
Yeah.
Right. And Jonathan, what about your clients?
I think, my clients, I think I'm a bit of more specific in terms of, by the time they get to me, they know who I am.
They know you're going to impose your will.
They know what they typically know what I'm known for, or what my style is typically in my typical project. I rarely about specific trend, but more what I came to say earlier strongly about specific showroom and brand. And when they want that, then I try to educate and stir. When they want instant furniture, I'll say, listen, just like I've been known to say this, I relate everything to food because I love eating. Listen, I know in college you love instant noodles, but it's not so good for you. Why don't you go to a restaurant and order a really good food, healthy, good, and it might take a little longer, but the end result's amazing. Even if you buy something from Chairish, we may have to refurbish them, reupholster them, but to go to a specific showroom and they want the entire room to be furnished with that, I will say, you know what? I'm the wrong designer for you.
Right.
Well, first of all, I will stir them. I will educate them. I don't mind using one or two pieces, especially in your children's room or in your media room. But to have the entire room said, why do you need me? Why do you come to Jonathan Rachman Design? Why don't you go to the showroom and have them design because this is not what it's all about,
Right. Well, it's so interesting that trends still keep happening despite all of the supply chain disruptions, the longer delivery times. It's like we still on Instagram, and we're all addicted to Instagram. Let's face it.
Yes.
I'm trying to wean myself a little bit, but it's hard. That these still things pop up. And Noelle, I'd love to get a sense from you what you have seen even so far in the end of 2022 and 2023. Are there any directional things that are coming up that people are looking for? Like, you said warmer colors, the mustard, and all of a sudden the White Lotus influence. I mean, that is just so quick, and it's so surprising to me that it would be so immediate. So is there things that have been selling on Chairish that you think, oh, this is interesting, I wouldn't have expected this. This could be telling for the months ahead?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also a matter of the trends that, or the types of items that have just really held strong and I think continue to pick up. I mean, we're seeing a big resurgence in vintage or reproduction vintage cheeky needlepoint pillows. Again, which feel like they could be
something we haven't seen in 30 years.
Yeah.
With the little
the witty little
sayings
sayings,
and
the little bolsters.
So funny.
Those have just taken off. When we get the original vintage ones, I mean, those sell again. That can sell within an hour.
Right.
But we do have some people who are making reproductions that are really fun. We've seen a real interest in little portable lamps, ones that are rechargeable and you can kind of stick them anywhere.
Yep.
Also decorative lampshades, pleated shades.
Lampshades and pleated lampshades. Pleated lampshades is a big one.
How about I'm curious about footstools.
Oh, footstools are big. That really came back. And the needlepoint ones. We see them in needlepoint.
I love a footstool.
Yeah, we also see them, especially if they're in like a velvet tiger print or something like that. And honestly, one of the biggest things from the last few months has been very fancy and beautiful dog accessories. So dog beds.
Dog owners will spend anything on their dogs. I know
It's
this.
true.
Oh, I was going to say, we've always seen an interest in, those really wonderful antique English dog paintings and portraits. That was kind of the original thing a few years ago. And now it's moved to, we have, mid-century or even antique pagoda dog beds. I mean, I always think about Elsie DeWolf. She did a pagoda dog bed, and that was like over 100 years ago. So we're really seeing that. And then we also have some partners who make really beautiful dog pet food bowls now. So it's that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, it seems a little bit like granny chic maybe is coming back, that kind of grandma look.
We've been saying that for, yeah.
Really? Okay, that's
we call
interesting.
it granny chic.
Yeah,
Or
but
is
like
it
a cleaner
Her
version
Majesty?
of it. Yeah, exactly.
Or is it Her Majesty chic?
Yeah,
Yes.
well,
That's better.
Nod to Her Majesty.
she was a granny too, Jonathan.
Yes.
So maybe
You're right.
maybe that's the look. Although, like you guys were saying, I think a much more cleaner and a sort of sculptural take, and maybe some warmer colors. So interesting that all of this is happening at the same time. But let's hope we don't get, White Lotus to death here.
Well, I think it's all about that balance, like we talked about, and everyone doing it a different way, so it doesn't get so,
But it is interesting that trends don't go away; they change, they morph. But we're in an industry where we try and be timeless, we try and be above trends, but at the same time, clients get bored, which is a good thing for our industry. Your eye stop seeing things that you've seen a lot. Your eye is looking for, as Diana Vreeland said, the eye has to travel. And I think that, we can make fun of trends, but I think we are all, to a degree, their servants in a way. And you have to learn how to use them wisely. And you guys all, and again, the stronger your personal viewpoint is, and you guys are so incredibly talented and have that ability to, weed out the good, the bad, and take the few good things and work with that. But, not everybody has your talent. So you're going to see a lot of these colors, and you're going to see a lot of these things in granny chic or whatever, because God knows you could over granny a room in 15 minutes. But it's going to be so interesting to watch this. So I want to thank you guys for being here on the Chairish. I want to thank my wonderful guests, Jonathan Rachman, Brittany Zwickl, and Shannon Wollack of Studio Lifestyle, and Noelle Faden of Chairish. And now you know what you should all be looking for and looking to avoid in the year ahead. And so thank you, all my listeners, for listening to the Chairish podcast.